Am I audible, guys? Great. Is there an echo or is it fine? It's fine. Great. So we can start. I was actually speaking for the last 2-3 minutes, but I think there is some issue with the audio. So that's why you were not able to hear me. So let's start now. Not audible. Okay, someone is telling I'm not audible. How about others? You guys are able to hear me? Audible. Okay, great. The one who was saying I'm not audible is also able to hear me now. So that's great. So we're going to start with the quiz. There is a new marking scheme today. So whenever you get a question right, you're going to get the complete points for the question. And you will also get a bonus points depending upon how quickly you're going to get the question right. Okay, that's going to encourage people to attempt more questions. So let's start. I'm going to start the quiz. Those of you who have not taken this quiz earlier, please visit the link given in the description. Visit georgeprep.com/dashboard and take the live quiz that is going to go parallelly with this. So I'm going to start the quiz and come back. Okay, the first question is up in the quiz. It's up on the screen as well. Great. The time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard. Awesome. Good number of people have got the question right. Let's see how we can go about solving this one. Japan's military police, Kempeitai, provided lab rats, including Chinese patriots, nearby civilians, Russians, and Allied prisoners of war for Unit 731's human experiments during the Second World War. This affair became infamously known as which affair? This affair became infamously known as the elaborate American cover-up of war crimes, offering these perpetrators of crimes against humanity immunity in exchange for US access to Unit 731 research. After the war, they were allowed to escape persecution, unlike their Nazi counterparts in Europe. To dehumanize prisoners in their minds, the scientists and doctors. Now look at this. We saw some lab rats, right? Which means some experiments were going on. And here it is given to dehumanize prisoners in their mind. The scientists and doctors of Unit 731 called their test subjects marutas or logs and conducted the most excruciating live experiments on them. Okay, so we can start with one because it is giving us a context. Japan's military police provided lab rats, means provided somebody for experiments, including these people for Unit 731's human experiments during the Second World War. So I would start with one. And to dehumanize prisoners in their minds, the scientists and doctors, because the lab rats context tells us that some experiments were going on, right, on human beings. So to dehumanize prisoners in their minds, the scientists and doctors of Unit 731 called their test subjects marotas or logs and conducted the most exclusion. So I'll follow this up with two. And after the war, they were, so this they could be these Japan's military police and the scientists and the doctors who were part of this experiments, right? After the war, they were allowed to escape persecution. Of course, they should have been persecuted because they did something wrong, but they escaped persecution, unlike their Nazi counterparts in Europe. So the Japanese escaped persecution, unlike their Nazi counterparts in Europe. So we can follow that up with the. So this is not 2, this is 4. We followed 1 with 4. So 1, 4 and 3 because these people escaped persecution. And this affair, what affair are we speaking about? The whole fact that these guys escaped persecution unlike their Nazi counterparts. So that affair became infamously known as the elaborate American cover-up of war crimes. Why are we calling that a cover-up? Because they did not persecute these guys in exchange for access to certain files, right, or certain files or certain research. So this affair whereby the Americans did not persecute these people, instead got access to certain things. This affair infamously known as elaborate American cover-up of war crimes, offering these perpetrators was again the Japanese people, perpetrators of crimes against humanity, immunity in exchange for US access to Unit 731 research. So 1, which speaks about the lab rats and the experiments that were conducted. 4 speaks about who conducted those experiments and how they treated their test subjects. So that's the flow of logic here. So this says about lab rats, how some people were used as lab rats. And 4 speaks of dehumanization. 3 speaks of escaping persecution. And 4 says this whole affair is infamously known as American cover-up of war crimes. So that's the flow of ideas. Introducing the experiment, telling how people were dehumanized, how the people who conducted these experiments escaped persecution, and why that is called the American cover-up of war crimes. Okay, so we have 1, 4, 3 and 2. 1, 4, 3 and 2. So 1, 4, 3, 2 is the order for this question. Okay. Okay, someone is asking, so can 3 not follow 1 instead of 2? Can 3 not follow 1 instead of 2? No, 3 is following 1, right? Instead of 4. Okay, so can 3 not follow 1 instead of 4? Let's see. Japan's military police and all that, they did these experiments. After the war, they were allowed to escape persecution. Now, when you say they were allowed to escape persecution, now this they speaks about Japanese military police. Now, where are we going to fix these scientists and doctors? If I put the scientists and doctors, we are speaking about the police here. we are speaking about scientists and doctors here. And then when you say they were allowed to escape, that they is speaking about all these police, scientists and doctors who are all part of the experiment. But if I'm going to put three before this, I said they were allowed persecution. Now the scientists and doctors is not being brought into the discussion because they were also allowed to escape. That is why it will be a better order to have three following four, where 1 and 4 is speaking of all the people who are involved in the experiment. And then we are going to 3 to say that these people were allowed to escape. Is that clear? Why we are coming with 3 after 1 and 4? Great. So 1, 4, 3, 2 is the best order. Those who are there in the live session, if you're clear with why we are going with 1, 4, 3, 2, please type 1 as a response. Awesome. Let's move to the next question. The next question is up in the quiz. It is up on the screen as well. Okay, I could see that there are some people who scored less than 4 for the first question. So the only explanation I can give for that is you did not refresh your website. So you still have the old format of the quiz running. So please do refresh your quiz page once so that you get the latest form of the quiz software downloaded. So if you don't have the latest form of our app, let's say you did not refresh, you still are running the old code, which is going to calculate your score differently. So please do refresh once if you're taking the live quiz so that you have the latest form of the quiz downloaded so that you get marks accordingly. I think that explains, Pranay. Okay, let's look at the standings of the leaderboard after this question. Great. So we have Pranay on top, Usha at number 2, followed by Sagar, Nidhi, and so on. Great. Let's see how we can solve this question, guys. Tariffs were raised on more and more products, including even tombstones, as lobbyists persuaded members of the Congress to protect local industries. In the 1920s, food prices declined substantially as more and more land once used to grow fodder crops for horses and mules were turned over to growing food for humans. While intended to help mostly farmers, the promised tariff legislation, shepherded through Congress by Senator Reed Smoot and Rep. Willis Hawley, soon became subject to a special interest feeding frenzy. Okay, they're speaking about special interest feeding frenzy, and it is given tariffs were raised on more and more products. That kind of backs the frenzy here. Okay, the result was the highest tariff in US history except for the Tariff Act of 1828. During the election of 1928, Republican candidate Herbert Hoover promised, I have promised here, and there is given the promised tariff legislation, so kind of connects, right? Promised US farmers protection from foreign competition to help raise farm prices. Okay, now let's see how we can start. If we have to respect chronology, you can see here in the 1920s what the scene was given. Right? In the 1920s, food prices declined substantially as more and more land once used to grow fodder crops for horses and mules were turned over. So I can start with 2, which speaks of what happened in 1920. And then during the election of 1928, so I can follow that up with 5. Right? The food prices were going down. And during the election of 1928, this candidate promised US farmers protection from foreign competition to help raise farm prices. He promised. And then we can follow it up with 3, which says, while intended to help mostly farmers, the promised tariff legislation, because he promised during the election, right? So that promised tariff legislation, so we can go to 3 after that. Shepherded through these people in the Congress, soon became subject to a special interest feeding frenzy, because see, he promised for farmers, but there could be a lot of other people who come and lobby saying that we also need some kind of protectionist legal measures, right? So it became a frenzy. So what happened after that? Tariffs were raised on more and more products, including even tombstones, as lobbyists persuaded members of Congress to protect local industries. So that could be followed by 1. And what was the result of the frenzy that's given in the 4th? The result was the highest tariff in US history except for the Tariff Act of 1828. So that should be followed by 4. So that should be the order for this. So how's the logic flowing? Let's see. So this said what happened in 1920s, right? Prices came down and all that. More and more land was used to grow fodder. And coming to 5, it says of what happened in 1928. Something was promised by the Republican candidate, right? And in 3, it says when the promised legislation was rolled out, what happened? It led to a frenzy. Means people started freaking out. Almost every other person started asking, in our particular field of business also there is problems, so give us also protectionist legal measures. So what happened because of that? More and more products, even tombstones, started getting these kind of protectionist laws for them. So it explains the frenzy. And 4 says what is the result? The result is highest tariff in US history. So that is the flow of logic, guys. We start with what happened in 1920s in statement 2, and then move to 1928. Somebody promised some kind of legislation, and that legislation was rolled out But that led to another kind of frenzy that's explained in third. And what kind of frenzy and what happened? It explains the frenzy that more and more products started asking for those kind of measures. That is given in 1. And 4 says as a result, what finally happened? Highest tariff in US history was experienced, barring the Tariff Act of 1828. So the best order is 25314. Please type C if everybody who's there in the live session is clear with why we are going with this order, 25314. Awesome. Let's move to the next question. The next question is up in the quiz. It's up on the screen as well. Great, the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard after this question. Does that mean nobody answered this question? Okay, there is no change in the status. Looks like no one answered this. Let's see how to solve this question. In layman's terms, AMFI asked distributors to stop identifying themselves as advisors and clearly state that they are in the business of distribution of financial products. In a recent circular, AMFI said that no person dealing in the distribution of securities shall use the nomenclature independent financial advisor. So this layman's term should come after you have spoken about what was directly told, and then you first tell what was directly told and then explain it in simpler terms, right? So layman's term should come after this. In a recent circular, AMFI said that no person dealing in the distribution of securities shall use the nomenclature independent financial advisor or wealth advisor or any other similar name unless registered with SEBI as an investment advisor. For the SEBI registration, okay, registered with SEBI is there. For the SEBI registration is there. For the SEBI registration, the firm must make its financial advisors or wealth managers appear for the registered investment advisor certification exam and declare it. The whole exercise can be taxing. Okay, the exercise can be the registration. Can be taxing as it means changing registrations, bank accounts, cards, and so on. The name of the distribution firms must be changed to. So that tells me that so something else was also asked to be changed, right? So let me read statement 2 once again. In a recent circular, AMFI said that no person dealing with the distribution of security shall use a nomenclature. So this nomenclature should not be used. What nomenclature? Financial advisor, wealth advisor, or any other similar terms, right? So it spoke about person. So it spoke about individuals. Statement 2. The name of the distribution firms must be changed too. Not only individuals, firms also should change their names if they don't fall under the specified conditions. So we can start with 2. It spoke of individuals being required to change their names if they are identifying themselves as financial advisor or wealth advisor without having the required credentials. And firms also should change their names if they have advisor or wealth managers and so on as a part of their name. So 2 can be followed with 5. That speaks about what AMFI directly said. So these 2 points speak about what AMFI directly said in the regulation. Okay, now in layman's terms, okay, after saying what was directly told, only we will go to layman's terms and try to explain that in easier way, right? So 2.5, now I can follow that up with 1, which says in layman's terms, AMFI asks distributors to stop identifying themselves as advisors and clearly state that they are in the business of distribution of financial products. So what this is doing here is giving an easier explanation for what was given earlier. But for that, there is no role for that. I mean, you can actually get rid of 1 and still the passage will flow nicely. Okay. Now coming to the other 2 statements. For the SEBI registration, if you notice, in these regulations that AMFI gave in point 2 and point 5, they did speak about SEBI registration. So statement 1 that is coming here is just trying to rephrase what was given in 2 and 5 in a slightly simpler format. So I can nicely connect what was given in 2 and 5 in what is going to come later. Okay. So for the SEBI registration, so I can put 3 here. Speaks of SEBI registration. For the SEBI registration, which was actually mentioned in the original regulations. For the SEBI registration, the firm must make its financial advisors or wealth managers appear for the registered investment advisor certification exam and clear it. The whole exercise, that is the whole registration process, can be taxing as it means changing registrations, bank accounts, cards, and so on, so on, so on. So 3 should be followed by 4. So how is the flow of logic in 3 and 4? 3 speaks about what should be done for the SEBI registrations, and 4 says the whole exercise being taxing. Which exercise? This SEBI registration exercise being taxing. So the flow of logic, to sum it up, is like this. 2 and 5 speak about the regulations, and 1 gives an easier explanation by saying in layman terms what it means. 3 says for the registration what you're supposed to do, because 2 and 5 they spoke about the registration. So 3 says in the registration what you're supposed to do, and 4 says that the whole registration process is a taxing exercise. So the best order we have is 2, 5, 1, 3, 4 for this question. Please type C if you're clear with how we can, how we got the answer for this. Great. Those of you who are there in the session, please do like this video in case you're finding this useful, because I could see that sometime later some of you might leave. So right now, if you're there in the session, if you're finding the session useful, please make sure you like the video so that it helps us to reach more people. Great. Let's move to the next question. The next question, that is the fourth question, is up in the quiz. It's here on your screen as well. Those of you who joined late, in case you want to take the quiz, please head to the link in the description, georgeprep.com/dashboard, and you can start the live quiz. It looks like the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard at the end of this question. There is some change. We have Nidhi coming to rank 2. Pranay is still at rank 1. Usha is at 3. Okay, let's discuss this question. The audacity means what? Boldness. The audacity of Westwood in the construction I don't know what exactly is Westwood right now. Westwood in the construction of Ozone Disco Club by evading compliance with important provisions of the National Building Code to suit its own business purposes is simply overwhelming. According to the National Building Code, there shall be at least one entrance and another one for exit. It was also found that Hermilo Ocampo, owner of the disco, and Raman NG, treasurer of Westwood Entertainment. See here, we have Westwood Entertainment, and here we have Westwood. So definitely Westwood would come after we have spoken about Westwood Entertainment, which is like the introduction of what Westwood is. Otherwise, it's not clear what Westwood is, right? The treasurer of Westwood Entertainment worked together to secure unwarranted benefits, advantage, or preference from the former building officials. It is also found. So what else did you find initially? The supposed alternative exit. See, they spoke about 2 exits here, right? One entrance and another one for exit. The supposed alternative exit, which was located at the VIP lounge, was actually obstructed by a sofa and an LPG tank, which only led to a firewall. The fire at Ozone Disco Club showed that the building officials, in conspiracy with the others accused, ignored the provisions of National Building Code. Hey, we spoke about National Building Code here. Okay, so now let's put things together. So this speaks about the National Building Code of Philippines. See, after speaking about National Building Code of Philippines, you can speak of National Building Code. Similar to after discussing about Westwood Entertainment, we will go to speaking about it as just Westwood. So the fire at Ozone Disco Club, it sets the context for what is the problem at hand, right? The fire at Ozone Disco Club showed that the building officials in conspiracy with other accused ignored the provisions of the National Building Code of Philippines. I would start with that. And what is that National Building Code of Philippines that's given here? According to the National Building Code, there shall be at least one entrance and another one for exit. So that highlights the provisions of the National Building Code, which are going to be of importance here. So that's 2. The supposed alternative exit, because we did speak about one entrance and one exit, right? The supposed alternative exit, we spoke about another one for exit, right? In point 2. The supposed alternative exit, which was located at the VIP launch, was actually obstructed by a sofa and LPG tank, which only led to a firewall. So I could follow that up with 4. It was also found. Now, why are we saying also found? Because they already violated some provisions of the National Building Code, right? They did not have a clear alternate exit. They had some kind of an exit which is leading to a place where you cannot actually go out. So there is a problem here itself. And it was also found, not only did they violate the code, National Building Code, it was also found that these guys worked together to secure unwarranted benefits, advantages, or preference from former building officials. So they also secured unwarranted benefits. Not only did they violate the provisions, they also went ahead to get unwarranted benefits. So that's why that also is justified here. So this speaks about what all happened in the context. The audacity of Westwood in the construction of Ozone Disco Club. So now why would I put this point at the end? Because when you say the audacity of it, you have to speak about all that is leading to the audacity, right? So one of that is not following the National Building Code, and the other one is going ahead and securing some benefits by dealing with some people. So finally, I can say the audacity of Westwood in the construction of Ozone Disco Club by evading compliance with important provisions of the National Building Code to suit its own business purposes is simply overwhelming. So let's look at how the ideas were flowing through the sentences. So 5 gave us the context about the fire incident. And it said that there is something called the National Building Code of Philippines. 2 explained what are the provisions of the National Building Code of Philippines. And 4 explained how the National Building Code of Philippines was not followed and how it was violated, how the alternative exit was not actually in spirit, in line with the law. So this speaks of the violation of National Building Code. And 3 says not only did they violate the code, they also went ahead. So they also got benefits, advantages, or preferences. And finally, 1 rounds up by saying that the audacity with which these people did all this is overwhelming. So that's the flow of ideas through these sentences. So the best order we have is 5, 2, 4, 3, and 1. Please type C, the ones who are there in the live session, if you're clear with why we are going with 5, 2, 4, 3, and 1 for this question. Perfect. But I could not see many of you answering. So what is the problem? Time was less, is it, to answer the question? Okay, someone was asking in the previous question why we did not go with layman terms in the end. Layman terms you cannot put in the end, because when you explain something, let's say you are directly stating what a particular authority said, immediately you will have to say with layman terms. See, if I'm explaining something complicated, I would not come and give you an easier explanation of that after a long time. I'll have to give it immediately. So the layman terms point has to come almost immediately after you explain what was directly given. Okay, you might get one sentence wrong and that might knock you off from getting the whole thing right. Okay, someone exchanged 31 and 3-1 and 2-4. 3-1 and 2. That's the main problem with paragraph jumbles with the options, guys. You could get connections together, But let's say I have a link here, I have a link. If I'm not able to put them together, let's say I can put like this or like this, that can create problems. See, this is one of the reasons I say you should not spend too much time on paragraph jumbles when you come for the actual cat. Okay, because it looks like it's all fine, but you might not end up scoring marks there. But that doesn't mean that you leave out paragraph jumbles completely, but you can think about it a little deeply to see if it will make sense or not. Sometimes what happens is, how much ever you think, you won't be able to put them together. You will still feel that, 3 1 2 4 2 4 3 1, you are not able to break it. At that point, you'll have to mark something and go forward. Okay, paragraph jumbles is tricky, but it can be done. Time could be a constraint, so you should not end up spending a lot of time on that, because you might still get it wrong at the end of it. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're going for the real exam. Let's go to the next question, which is also our last question. Before that, if you haven't liked the video, please do like it. If you really liked the session that's happening, it helps us to reach more people. Okay, the last question for today's discussion is up in the quiz. It's also up on your screen. Okay, the time is up. Let us see the status at the end of this question. There's a bit of change in the top. We still have Pranay topping the leaderboard, followed by Nidhi, Gambhir, Rajalakshmi, Usha, Sagar. Congrats, guys. Congrats for, first of all, turning up in the morning, taking a quiz, and then putting your effort to get things right. Okay, let's see how we can solve this question. Yet somehow, okay, that's not a great way to start. Yet somehow everything seems to be irreparably and horribly amiss. So yet something is negative. So before that, I should speak of something positive, right? Mark Manson's new book puts a name to this contradiction. Which contradiction? This contradiction claims to be able to fix it. While we have access to technology, education, and communication systems our ancestors couldn't even dream of, so many of us come back to an overriding feeling of hopelessness. This looks like a contradiction. right? We have a lot of things that our ancestors did not have, yet we come back to overriding feeling of hopelessness. That could be the contradiction that is being spoken about in statement 2. At this moment in history, we are freer, healthier, and wealthier than any people in human history, and materially everything is the best it has ever been. See, this is definitely speaking about something extremely positive, right? At this moment in history, we are freer, healthier, wealthier than any people in human history, and materially everything is the best it has ever been. Probably after this, I can come with statement 1, which says, yet somehow everything seems to be irreparably and horribly amiss. 5th one, the planet is warming, governments are failing, economies are collapsing, and everyone is, hey, this I think is explaining what is amiss. Right? When you say something is amiss, it's not in order, it's kind of out of order. Right? The planet is warming, governments are failing, economies are collapsing, and everyone is perpetually offended on Twitter. Okay, I think we can put the order down now. So we can start with 4 because it starts with something extremely positive about the current situation. And 1 says, yet somehow everything seems to be irreparably and horribly amiss. So I can follow that up with 1, 4 and 1. It spoke of things being amiss, and that is being explained in 5. Right? Planet is warming, governments are failing, and so on. That's it. And there is no solid link between that and 3. But if you look at 3, while we have access to technology, education, communication systems, our ancestors couldn't even dream of, so many of us come back to an overriding feeling of hopelessness, which is a contradiction, right? We have a lot of things that our ancestors did not have. However, we come back to a feeling of hopelessness. So there is a contradiction definitely in statement 3. Mark Manson's new book puts a name to this contradiction. Which contradiction? The contradiction spoken in statement 3, and claims to be able to fix it. That is 2. Now, there is a solid link between 3 and 2. And 4, 1 and 5 are also solid. Now, one might think, what will I put first? What will I put after that? Okay. So if you look at this, it starts with positive. Then it says, yet things are amiss. 5th one explains why things are amiss, like what makes you feel that things are amiss, because governments are failing, economies are collapsing, and so on. 3 tells, while we have access to technology, education, communication systems, our ancestors couldn't even dream of. So this says there are a lot of positive things, but still we come back to hopelessness. 2 says, Mark Manson's new book puts a name to this contradiction and claims to be able to fix it. Speaks of Mark's book. Now, if someone asks me, why would you go for 415 followed by 32 and why not put 32 in the front? Mark's book is more like a conclusion right here, right? Mark's book puts a name to this contradiction and claims to be able to fix it. So you cannot again go back to positive negative story. Okay, this is more like a concluding statement here. There are these issues and this book claims to fix these issues. So a better order will be to have 415 coming in the end, because 4 starts with something completely positive, and then 1 goes to yet there is something amiss, and 5 explains what is amiss, right? Positive, but something is amiss. What is amiss? There are a lot of positive things. However, there is a contradiction in the way we feel about them. And then Mark's book claims to put a name to this contradiction, and it says it will be able to fix it. So when you say it will be able to fix it, that is kind of concluding the whole paragraph. So the best order we have is 4, 1, 5 followed by 3 and 2. So answer is 4, 1, 5 followed by 3 and 2. Please type C if everybody is clear with why we are going with 4, 1, 5 followed by 3, 2 for this question. Great. With that, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Tomorrow, we will have 5 questions on paragraph jumbles with odd man out format. Okay. I'll catch up with you guys in tomorrow's session. See you guys. Have a great day.